Another one is be proactive. This is as simple as, you do something like you ask a question or you post something and be like, hey, if you have any feedback on this, let me know. And this is something that Rahul and I welcome. This is a new idea that I had. So if you're asking a question in our Slack community or on LinkedIn, feel free to just ask like, hey, if there's anything that I can improve about this question, let me know. So if you want to get feedback on your question asking, we're happy to give it, right? Like Rahul and I are happy to explain like, oh yeah, maybe you could have included, X, Y, and Z to your question to make it easier to answer. And this is important because again, it can be a bit weird for the person giving feedback to give it, right? Because they don't know how you're going to react. But if you, as the question asker, like this person who's like, looking for feedback, if you make it clear up front that, hey, I welcome feedback, that makes it so much easier for people to give you feedback, right? Because they know that you're going to be cool with it. So yeah, this is a very tactical piece of advice if you already work at a company. But this is something I've unfortunately noticed is that like managers kind of fall in the same, like they're also people, right? They're like, oh, I don't know if this person can handle the feedback, right? Or they just forget to give feedback. So this is something I've done with every manager I've had for the past like 3-4 years is as soon as I, build a relationship with them and I start reporting to them like, hey, I love feedback. I want pretty much feedback. If you give me your feedback on a recurring basis, that'd be great. And pretty much like every 2 or 3 weeks, I'll be like, hey, over the past like couple of weeks, what am I doing? What am I doing well? And what am I not doing too well? Or it could be something. What am I doing something that's just okay and can be improved? Right. I just proactively ask for feedback, and I always kind of set the stage in a one-on-one setting because like it's like if you have one-on-ones with anybody, especially in a work environment, just make it clear, like, because that's a very intimate environment, right? That's like the most comfortable environment to give feedback in. You really want to capitalize on that and really set the stage in those meetings. Like, hey, this is, kind of a private forum. And if you have feedback from me, I really want it because I really want to improve. I want to be like the best kind of like work, partner or a colleague for you as possible. And this is the last one is kind of like working against like with the theme of being proactive is sometimes it can be tricky for people to give feedback because they're actually not entirely sure like what areas of like improvement that you value. So, and this is something I've tactically done on my code reviews, on my pull requests in particular, is you preemptively surface areas of improvement. So there's this concept of like you should be, so I've heard you should be your own harshest critic, but I feel like that's a bit harsh because then that can lead to self-esteem issues. But you should be a critic of yourself, right? So of course, we all want feedback from other people, but you should also be thinking to yourself, like, okay, I pretend like I'm an outside observer of myself, right? Like, what am I doing that could be improved? And then when you ask for feedback from other people, you can use that kind of insights you get from kind of like self-observing to essentially probe for feedback in that area. You'd be like, okay, manager, I feel like I was struggling, kind of communicating my point in like X meeting, right? Like your brain kind of sounds like you probably could have improved there. And then you ask your manager, like, okay, like in that meeting, what could I have done differently, right? Like, how can I improve, right? And that makes it a lot easier for them to give you feedback because like you've already given them this area that like you probably could get feedback in, and you go, like, okay, I care about this. So it's kind of like the question thing, right? Like you're essentially lowering the barrier for them, like answering your question. And in this case, the question is, hey, what feedback do you have for me? And then for code review, what I'll do with a lot of code reviews is like if I'm writing like a diff, like a commit, and there are like some pieces I know that are like frankly kind of spaghetti, like, okay, yeah, like this API was kind of hard to work with, so I kind of wrote this hack to do it, or like, oh yeah, this part I've never actually built something here before, so I don't know if I'm following like the proper standards. I'll proactively leave comments on my own pull request being like, hey, these are the areas I'm pretty sure I could have done a better job in, like please comment on these, right? And this is really helpful on like on a piece as tactical as a pull request, because code is really complicated, right? Like for a 100-line pull request, you could probably leave 100 different comments, right? So this is greatly helpful for the people reviewing your code, like the people who are trying to give you feedback, because you essentially point them to the kind of the hot spots, right? So again, you're lowering the barrier to entry for them giving you feedback. So these are just kind of like some tips on how you can essentially get more coaching feedback more quickly.
Yeah. This whole presentation is about learning quickly in tech. And Alex and I believe so strongly in this pillar of feedback as a way to learn in tech. that we've actually, in many ways, the Slack community is almost designed for that. It's like supposed to be that, hey, if you don't have colleagues at work who are giving you the proper feedback or guidance, then Slack is basically that stand-in replacement to allow that. So that's a big part of what we're trying to achieve with the community. And in fact, we went one step further, and we'll talk about this a little bit more later on, but we actually made a whole application called Ember. But I dropped links in the comments. But the idea of Ember is that for your personal projects, right? If you don't have like a team, or if you don't have people to give you like points of improvement on your Android app, iOS app, web app, whatever it might be, whatever you're developing, then you can post it on Ember. And then Alex and I will deliver. We're going to spend at least 10 minutes on each project giving you feedback. We'll try it out, download it, and give you feedback. So those are just two things that I quickly want to plug. Then coming back to the higher level concept of getting feedback, I think that one way of framing it is one-on-ones should be a time for difficult conversations. And I think the way you should think about it is that if you're not having something which is an awkward or difficult conversation in your one-on-one, you're probably not doing it correctly. Job in this presentation, you're doing really well, you're so productive. Like, why are you wasting time in the one-on-one and giving me praise? Like, that kind of praise, that can be said in public. So like in a team meeting, you can call out people and say, I think you did a great job in this project. The one-on-one time is sacred time, where you should actively be doing things like giving constructive feedback on what you could be doing better. So I really like what Alex described about, using the one-on-one time to proactively ask for feedback and what could be better. And just the way you think about the one-on-one should be along those lines, rather than it being a time to just, pat yourself on the back, or for your manager to pat you on the back. Let me see if there's anything else I wanted to add here. Yeah, and I think the other thing is, even for non-managers, like I think I've said this in a previous session, but what I'll do is I will schedule a time with other key people on the team, and I'll tell them, okay, for next week on our Monday meeting, I want that to be a feedback session. So on that 30-minute slot that we have on Monday, I don't want to talk about project updates or the timeline for when this release is going to go out. I don't really want to talk about that. I want to talk about what observations do you have about my work? What should I start doing? What should I stop doing? And what should I keep doing? And sometimes when you phrase it like that, you get much better answers, much better feedback, compared to saying, hey, can I get feedback? If you kind of say, what should I start doing? Or what should I stop doing? You are kind of preempting them to give you a certain answer. Like it helps them give you feedback.